someone who's a bridge between culture and brands, right? You'd be the perfect person to answer this.
You don't always need to be working like directly towards your goals to be working towards your goals with what's right for our subculture. And I think that that's something that we put a lot of effort in connecting with the right people. If we don't know a space or we don't understand it, like what are the things that excites this audience? I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I think that's something that no one really told me when I was younger, was that...
What were some of those first early mistakes you guys made in terms of, because now you're running a business?
I think the biggest mistakes we made was not setting up, well, say no to that paycheck because you're building a long-term relationship here.
With this brand,
But then it's making sure that you're getting the...
What does the bread understand about events that other establishments don't?
People don't feel comfortable in that space. They want a bit of that grit. They want a bit of that, like...
And you're live on Dead Radio.
Welcome to another very special episode of Dead Radio. And once again, we have an extremely special guest in the building, reporting live from the Dead Store, 138 Jan Smuts. We're gonna get into his life story, and you know what we do? Extract those jewels for you guys to use in your everyday lives. So without further ado,
Hey guys, I'm Andrew Berry. I'm the co-founder and managing director of The Bread, a marketing agency, based in Joburg.
Dope. Thank you so much for joining us, bro.
Pleasure, man. Yeah, happy to be here.
How are you feeling right now? I know you don't do a lot of like conversations with people on camera, so it's really special for us, but how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited about what you guys are gonna sort of dive into. Obviously, it's, like as business owners, you don't often get to talk about kind of the behind the scenes, kind of where you came from, what you did.
Yes.
And I've had a few opportunities, but it's always fun to kind of chat to new people. And
I feel that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start your story from the beginning. Where were you born, and tell us about Andrew as a young man?
I was born in Cape Town. I grew up in Cape Town.
Okay.
I lived in Haupe, which is kind of a smaller community.
Okay.
And I lived, I was born in the 80s, like late 80s. So kind of the country as a whole was going through a transition. And I was the youngest of 3 kids, so kind of learned a lot from my brother and sister in terms of like kind of where things were at in terms of politics and things like that. So I think for me, a lot of my childhood was really like coming to terms with like the difference of people and kind of how we in the past was quite obviously segregated, and we were in like this generation that were able to kind of go, well, that's all in the past. How do we move forward from this? And I think. So I was born into that, and I mean, I think many of us were, and I think being in Haupe in Cape Town, it was quite different to living in Joburg.
Very different, right?
And I think that's what's kind of attracted to me being here now. Like I've been here for 10 years. I think I grew up, had one perspective of the world, but obviously visiting Joburg regularly, you got to learn a lot more. You got to kind of engage with people that had different upbringings to you, different backgrounds, and I think that's kind of stemmed a lot of where I am at now is stemmed from that childhood.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always great to give context of where you come from, because that informs so much of who you are today, right?
Definitely.
Were you an introvert? Were you an extrovert? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, I think I've always been extroverted. I like people, I like socializing, I like kind of understanding where people come from, what they're where they're at it in life. I think understanding people is, it's part of what I do
for a living. Literally.
But I mean, photography has also been a big part of my kind of journey, and I think capturing people and who they are and their real characters, like portraiture is one of my favorite parts of photography. And I think for me, like I've always wanted to get to know people that like people are the most important thing to me, you know what I mean? Okay. So that extroversion is birthed out of that wanting to know, that like that inquisitive mind. Like
I get
so yeah,
that.
I've always been extroverted.
Okay.
I'm one of those people who enjoys some like alone time to think through things and stuff.
I think
like
that's
that.
important.
Yeah.
Very important.
Especially in this day and age where you just got so much stuff coming at you. I think you've got to kind of sit back and digest it and kind of be with your own thoughts for a while so that you can kind of gain perspective from where you're coming from. You know?
I get that. Yeah. I get that. Okay. Tell us about Andrew transitioning from a young man to the teenage years, right? The teenage years are also like super important because that's when a lot of your character gets like sharpened and defined.
Yeah.
So what starts happening when you go into high school, you're a teenager, what do you start getting into? Like, what's your perspective on the world at that time?
Yeah, I think as I said, I was quite sheltered in like where I grew up. So there was a lot that wasn't part of my life from a very young age. So every time I kind of met a new person, kind of you go from primary school to high school, you meet a bunch of new people. I was very into sports when I was in school, so I played a lot of sports with people outside of my school because I went to a small school that had, so we played a lot of club sports and stuff like that. You got to meet people that would just love the same things as you loved, but they came from quite different backgrounds, and I think that kind of opened up like the door to more and more different things that I didn't know about when I was a kid, like things like sneaker culture and music. Music was a big part of my like sort of teenage years, like kind of understanding people through different types of music and meeting people through sort of a music scene. In my late teenage years, when I went to university, that's when I started like getting involved in photography and was very much into documenting other people that I kind of looked up to, and kind of I appreciated the creativity that they brought to kind of young South Africans' lives. Yeah. And I think that we were celebrating when I was kind of a teenager, you celebrated sort of global artists, global musicians, global brands. There wasn't so much sort of love for local brands or local musicians. It wasn't there, you know. And I think me and my sort of group of friends were very much about, we've got so much cool shit here. Like, why are we not celebrating it? Why are we not kind of like sort of
celebrating?
Yeah, and kind of elevating kind of that space. And that's kind of where my sort of love for South African culture kind of came from, was going, we got so much stuff here, like why are we only excited when like an international musician comes, or like when an international brand creates like a new range or whatever, or you know, like, why are we not backing our own people?
And you're live on Dead Radio. And you're live on Dead Radio.
I feel like definitely America, the West, has had a monopoly on the world's attention, right, for a very long time. And we're definitely living through a time. I guess maybe we'll discuss it later, or we can actually discuss it now. I have a theory that America culturally has hit the ceiling, right? And I feel like now the influence is moved on to different parts of the world. I mean, like even now with South Africa, with Amapiano and everything that it's doing, like the shift has happened. Like we're actually all watching it. And it's crazy that you at that time had such a forward vision in terms of, we actually don't have to look that. Like we have everything that we need right here. Like, damn, that's so forward thinking. Okay, so you get to the end of high school. What was your plan or your perspective in terms of career paths? Like, what were you thinking? Like, what were you thinking? What am I gonna do with my life? Because the end of high school is such an important time. You're like, okay, now life is about to get real. What am I actually going to do?
Yeah, I actually kind of my step after high school was kind of an interesting one. I was going to take a gap year and go like travel and stuff like that, but I finished school a bit young.
Okay.
So my brother was actually like, well, you're 17, like where are you going to travel to? What are you going to do? You can't drive, you can't do any of this stuff. Like, why don't you just like study and then kind of see if you can take a gap year after that or whatever. So I actually didn't really think that hard about what I was going to study because I didn't have much time because I hadn't applied to go study anyway, and I kind of made
It was one of those decisions where you're like, yo, I need to,
It's also like, what will they accept? Like, what can I get into? What can I do? Like, so for me, I always liked numbers and kind of the sort of science behind maths and stuff like that in school. And
I love that.
I love that. I know a lot of people don't expect that, but so I went and I studied economics, but I did like a kind of a weird mixture of courses because I applied so late. And So I did economics and politics and philosophy, and was actually really grateful to have done something, because I wouldn't have done the sort of politics and philosophy side of things unless I was kind of forced into that because of my late decision making. But I learned so much about like our country and like sort of people that within our country that didn't have any kind of understanding of their background, because in school we didn't learn about that stuff. The history was very, and I didn't do history past like when you had to. So I didn't dive deep into our country's history or anything like that. So the politics side of thing was really interesting for me. And also kind of got that transition from like a small school in Hope Bay to going to UCT, which had people from all over the country, people with very different backgrounds and very different kind of understanding of the world. Gave me so much. I mean, that was more learning from that than the actual coursework.
I get that.
And especially being a social person, for me, I focused heavily on kind of meeting new people and kind of going out and enjoying like different parts of life. Like
I get that.
And I mean, sometimes that was to the detriment of my
of course
studies,
but every young person
important for life. So I studied economics and philosophy and politics, and at university started a platform called We Are Awesome. I ran that while I was in university with a friend of mine. He was also studying finance, and we kind of needed a creative expression. Most of our friends were kind of in a creative space,
and you guys needed an outlet.
Yeah, we were studying something that wasn't creative at all, but we were both fairly creative people.
I hear that.
And we both kind of believed that there was something more to, as I said earlier, like what was happening locally. It was kind of in the early to mid 2000s, let's say, and the band scene was kind of at this weird merge, or the music scene, let's say, this weird merge of like Afrikaans bands that were like revolting against like that sort of very rigid society.
The establishment.
And you had like some of the sort of hip hop coming from Joburg down to Cape Town, because kids were like, this is what we want. You know, I mean, hip hop globally was huge in the mid 2000s. It was like and we didn't have much of our own like music in Cape Town that was really sort of popping off in terms of hip hop. So a lot of the artists were coming down, and kind of there was this mix of different cultures really happening, because it was sort of 10, 15 years after like sort of apartheid had finished, and I think that there was like that generation we were a little bit less knowledgeable about, or like we were a bit naive to the situation. So we're just like, we all love music, we all love this, let's all like get involved together, you know what I mean? So I think there was kind of this really interesting time in like South African youth culture, because all the different kind of music genres are kind of blending together. People were trying to do collabs across genres, and like there was all this cool stuff happening, and the creative scene was really like people were influencing each other, and it wasn't just like we're going, cool, this aesthetic that we see in America and Europe let's just do that. They were like, no, let's create like some of our own sort of stuff that can inspire like the next generation.
I hear that.
Yeah, so it was a really exciting time, and I think that obviously like things evolve and things change, but like for me, and maybe it was just because I was young at that time, it was really like there was a lot of cool shit happening, and no one was really documenting it. You know? So our role in that was like, let's document this.
Yeah.
We knew how to work cameras and stuff like that. We were like, let's go. If there's a cool event, if there's a cool exhibition, whatever's happening, let's try and document it.
So you happen to be at the right place at the right time with the right perspective.
Yeah.
And that's where We Are Awesome came from.
Yeah, I think it was just we saw what was happening from a creative perspective, especially in Cape Town. And it kind of bled into Joburg a bit later, but as kind of doors opened for us. But we were like, no one's really kind of placing a focus on all this stuff that's happening. And it's been there for a few years, but it's not really growing. And for us, we were like, well, all these brands are doing stuff that's kind of in a space that is dying. Like they were kind of supporting artists that weren't really like going anywhere. They weren't really. There wasn't a lot of focus on like who was doing cool shit in South Africa from a brand perspective, and that's kind of where we saw kind of a gap to go. Well, like if we create, there's already a hunger from the kids to see this stuff. If we kind of put it out there and allow people to sort of
connect,
and the brand. I mean, to be honest, we didn't really know how to reach out to brands. They eventually came to us. You know what I mean? So it was like we didn't know this. We were young. We were like our early 20s. We just knew we could get into the right spaces, document the right stuff. If we like posted about certain music or certain things, like we knew we'd get like loads of hits, and like we eventually got to a point where brands came to us and we had like really interesting conversations around like what they were doing, and that we realized, I mean, from there that they were just kind of taking global artwork, global material and going, cool, can you put this on your website? There was no local conversation, and we need to bring some of this and localize it and like make it, because we know what works on our platform, and we know what the kids want to look at. We were the kids. You know? So I think it was like there was a hunger for brands to kind of be in the right space, and they weren't reaching that audience like, I mean, they are now. They were really struggling. They were kind of, where they were getting airtime was like in magazines and on TV and stuff, and that hadn't died yet. But they didn't. They kind of didn't realize there was like this gap of like going, well, we know the internet's getting bigger and bigger and more important. And I mean, this, to give some perspective, when we started We Are Awesome, Facebook didn't exist.
Shit.
So it wasn't there. In 2007, 2008 is when you could get
Facebook. That's when Facebook.
And we had friends that lived in America, and they were basically like, at our university, we got this thing called Facebook.
Okay.
Do you have it? And we were like, no.
What is Facebook?
What's Facebook?
Okay.
And eventually we got it, and I mean, but we had We Are Awesome as a website before Facebook existed.
So at that time, right, you guys have this website, you guys are creating content, you're putting it up on the site. How is it spreading? Like, because there wasn't social media, so how were you actually getting the word out there for the site? So
what we used to do is we obviously we would take photos of all the people that were at different events, and we would hand out business cards when we went to events of people that had like obviously the website URL on it. We'd hand those out, and it was that sort of analog, you know what I mean? People would kind of go, okay, cool, and eventually, like, people were sharing, like, the links to the different albums of photos, like via message or whatever. And I can't remember what year WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp and Facebook actually came around at a similar time, but there was WhatsApp.
There was Mixit before that.
So Mixit, people used to share links to kind of the different albums. People used to email stuff to each other. And
email was big. Email was huge. Like,
and there was MySpace.
So
people used to share stuff on MySpace. A lot of like the photos we took and stuff would end up as people's like profile pictures. I mean, but it was all like quite analog. If you think, I haven't really like actually chatted about this, but it feels like when we were doing it, it felt like the only way you could do things.
Yes.
But now it's like it feels a bit outdated.
And I do feel that that's a lot of issues that people face today, because they only focus on the digital and they forget about the human interaction of, yo, here's my business card, bro. And that's where like I feel people are losing it. It's like, yeah, it's great that we have Instagram, it's great that we have WhatsApp, but like street teams are like a real thing, handing out pamphlets. Okay, I love that.
Yeah, we used to print stickers and then stick them in the bathrums and stuff. So at the places we used to take photos.
Guerrilla marketing.
Yeah. And it was like, I mean, it just felt like that was the easiest way to get to those kids. You know what I mean?
Get that.
And it was like, we would often throw our own parties, so we'd kind of, people would go, okay, what's the real awesome party? So they would like, they would all come, they would know the photos would be up. We were really strict about like kind of going, well, if we take photos of an event on Saturday night, those photos need to be up on Monday. And that was like quick turnaround for us. Like everyone knew like when they went to university on Monday, like could check out the photos the other day. Could see who did what on the weekend. But yeah, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook until kind of a year or two into us doing it, and Facebook kind of grew really quickly. And our, like basically our reach and our exposure to everyone grew really quickly as well.
I get that.
Because people were able to share things more easily. People were able to tag like different people in photos, and Facebook kind of worked a bit different. I mean, to be honest, I'm not even on Facebook anymore. But when we used to share stuff, people would go to a link. You wouldn't share like photos so much on Facebook. You'd share like links, and it was a lot more text heavy. And people would like still go to the website. Where I feel like now
it's all
there.
Facebook.
It's all
on Instagram.
So you don't. There's no need to go anywhere else. Whereas like when we kind of started with Facebook, it was people wanted to leave Facebook. They used it as like this is where I can get the links to places I want to go. I mean, there wasn't even Messenger on Facebook when we started. It was just walls. You just had a wall.
And you could poke people. I remember the early version of Facebook. Like,
it was, and if you posted the link on your wall and you tagged your friends, they would all go, and you'd get really good like coverage out of just like putting a link out there, tagging the right people, and it would kind of go from there. And it was interesting because we kind of saw this like massive rise in people like looking outside when Facebook became a thing. And from like 2008, 2009 to like 2010, 2011, it really like, it pumped.
Exploded, literally.
And then what happened is like Facebook evolved, Instagram launched, and basically people weren't leaving social media to go to other sites. And we were basically, I mean, we continued running We Awesome for quite a while, but our numbers and stuff dropped off because people were going, well, brands could now spend money on Facebook, they could spend money on Instagram. They had no need to spend money on like a platform that was not social media. And if you think about it, like, I mean, some of the brands we work on and the amounts of money they spend on social media now, it's crazy. Like if they would never spend that on like a platform
publication
that's locally. So it's like
true.
It's kind of, Facebook really helped all the local websites, and then it just killed them all. So it's like this. Now people have to create stuff that can work with the I mean this video I'm just going on YouTube, you know,
literally going on YouTube.
So it's like cool, we've found a way to evolve how we create and how we put things out there, and we go cool, now we're going to put it onto a platform that we know it's going to live there, and we know we can make money from it living there, you know what I mean? I think it's like that was like when we were creating We Are Awesome, we had to create the platform. We had to create everything. I mean, we learned to code to be able to upload the photos, because we didn't get this like template that so it's very like manual and analog, and like it was, you couldn't just, it wasn't as accessible, so if someone did it, it was more important. But now everyone can do it, so that everything's everywhere, you know.
Everything is like, watered down now.
Well, yes and no, because there's a lot more stuff, but to break through that, it's got to be really sharp. It's got to be really like interesting. You've got to really create something that
special,
no one else is doing, you know.
I hear that.
All we had to do was go, cool, we're going to create this thing that no one else is willing to put the effort into to do it, and then put out what we're doing, and it was like, no one else was doing anything because it was such a task to
I hear that.
Whereas now everyone's doing something.
So it's like that.
It really has pushed us into a place where like you have to elevate everything you do, and you have to evolve your craft and everything into a space that aligns with how those platforms that exist are treating content, treating their audiences, treating the algorithms and stuff like that. So it does become a little bit of like, you've got to really know and understand the sort of landscape really well to do anything that creates.
Just to cut through.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally just to cut through.
Yeah.
Okay, damn. So We Are Awesome is moving, it's getting traction, it's becoming a thing, brands are coming in. What were some of those first early mistakes you guys made in terms of, because now you're running a business, right? Like, and a lot of business owners make, when you get a large sum of money, you don't actually really know how to budget, use the money. What were some of those early mistakes that you guys did when money started coming in?
I think the biggest mistakes we made was not setting up. We kind of had credibility in a space that other people couldn't even buy. You know what I mean? We had carved out this space for ourselves.
Yes.
But we didn't. Yes. We knew we had carved it out because brands and publications hadn't evolved in a way that they needed to live in that space. But then we didn't really evolve.
Okay.
Beyond that, you know what I mean? We didn't move as quickly as we needed to kind of continue being like relevant in that space. I think as We Are Awesome, I think We Are Awesome was a platform that for a while platforms weren't relevant anymore. People were like, well, Facebook and there's all that stuff. And there was kind of this, I don't know. I don't really know what the mistake was, but I don't know what the result was. You couldn't give as much value as like social media because it was kind of this crossover between like people are putting that content out there. Everyone starts doing it once, like because we had built up enough of like let's document, let's be proud of like South African culture, let's push it. And I think everyone kind of started doing that because they could easily do it. I mean, Instagram, you could take a photo, upload it 10 seconds there, you know what I mean?
You don't have to learn coding.
Yeah. You don't have to, the hurdles that we had, it just became this kind of free-for-all, which I think was great. It meant that like what we were trying to do was happening and not just by us, which we were excited about. We weren't like, oh man, we've lost this monopoly of the space. We were like, no, people really need to kind of push this. But I think as a business, the mistakes we made were kind of maybe focusing on some of the wrong things that were like, they excited us, but they maybe weren't right for like a more broader audience. I think we also didn't really run it as a business. We ran it as like something that we just loved to do. Of course. It's a mistake in terms of a business thing. I think you must love what you do, but you also got to kind of balance that with like, is this sustainable?
Exactly.
You know? And I think that lots of young people, when they start things that they're really passionate about, that grow momentum, they kind of keep on just doing the stuff that they really love. And that's good to a degree, but sometimes what you really love is not really a business. Yeah, it's not a business decision. So I think we made a few decisions that were just around, we want to do this because we love doing it, and we would do work that we wouldn't really get money for just because we wanted to do it.
I hear that.
And I think kind of we didn't kind of set the bar in the right place. We kind of set it where like, cool, well, we're not really worried about how much money we make. We just want to do cool
we
stuff.
Just love what we're doing.
Yeah. I think that sometimes puts you in a like unsustainable space. And then I moved to Joburg in 2013.
Okay.
And was still just running We Are Awesome. And then 2014 was doing a bunch more projects that were kind of felt bigger than just the platform we owned. and I was doing them with different people who I owned We Are Awesome with. We were working on projects with brands where they were like, no, we don't just want you to shoot the content and post on your site. We want you to kind of come up with bigger strategies around the content. How do we bring kind of what We Are Awesome knows from a culture perspective, what some of the other people I was working with, kind of their background, and bring that together and do sort of different projects. And that's where the bread
comes from. Okay.
So I was working with Nicholas Christovitz and Anthea Poulos, who I still work with Anthea Poulos. Nicholas lives in Berlin now, so he moved to Berlin and left the bread in 2017. But in the first few years, the three of us kind of were working together with Katlejo Mapanyani. So the four of us kind of worked on projects that, I mean, Kat had a events background, Nicholas was a designer, Anthea was in research and youth culture, and I was obviously came from the content perspective and did a lot of events and stuff.
And then you guys put it together. Yeah.
We were like, no, if we all have these kind of backgrounds and this network of people to bring together to kind of create projects that none of the brands were able to do with their more traditional agencies, and they were trying to do them from an internal perspective, but there was this push towards like South African culture really shining through in kind of the mid 2010s. And we were able to work with some of the brands that one of the three or four of us had a history with, and kind of do some amazing projects. I mean, the likes of Vans. I mean, we did a bunch of stuff with Levi's. We work on both of those brands still, but kind of
today,
a lot of the alcohol brands. I mean, and there was other brands that kind of we did stuff with along the way, but kind of those are the two main ones. I mean, some of the obviously the sort of alcohol brands, kind of the projects we were able to do at the time were kind of a little bit more sort of progressive compared to what they had done in the past. I mean, and now a lot of that work is commonplace. You know what I mean? Like it's like people are linking up culture and brands all the time now. It's like we felt like that wasn't happening that much, and we felt there was a massive gap to do more of that type of work. Yeah.
Because you guys basically pioneered that space. Obviously, not just you guys. It's a collective of people.
I think what happened is there was like a push that people didn't want to see some like international like superstar on getting all the local sort of brand projects, if that makes sense. Like I think there was like people wanted to see their own local heroes be celebrated, and I think that there weren't that many companies or businesses or agencies kind of set up in a way that they could deliver on that. There was I mean, we weren't the only ones. There was a whole sort of generation of people that were similar to us that really wanted to celebrate like local culture, and I think that people had put the sort of time and effort into making sure they could do that, but it wasn't everyone, you know what I mean? And I think there were opportunities to kind of go like, how do we bring what this brand wants to do with what these kids are doing, or this kind of creative group, or and bring that together in a way that really benefit both groups, and we were fortunate enough to be again in the right place at the right time. We really we've always, four of us have always loved brands and kind of what brands are able to do, what they represent, kind of the history of kind of brands celebrating individuals to kind of push their own narrative, but also to give opportunity. And we wanted to kind of sort of further that in a local context.
I get that.
And I think I think the opportunities are still there. You know?
I think 1,000%.
I mean, we've this year's been 10 years of running the bread, and I think that there's the opportunities that were there 10 years ago are still there now, and the scale is kind of getting bigger and bigger, and the kind of level of brand and the size of brands that are willing to do sort of like completely local focused movements is just keeps on growing. And I
hear that. What were some of the things? Because you're a bridge builder, right? That's how I see what you do in terms of brands and culture, right? And that's such a great space to occupy, right? But building bridges is a complicated skill, right? So what were some of those first things you had to convince the brands about investing local culture? Because obviously, from a time when they wanted to put international stars in local campaigns, what were some of those things you had to make them understand on both sides, right? Because I'm sure culture also was like, yeah, would love to work with that brand, but they steal from us, or they do this, or they do that. And you being the bridge builder, you have to find common ground between both of these sides. So how did you guys actually convince the brands and convince culture to come and use this bridge that you built, which is the bread, essentially?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think there's a sort of a perception of when a brand works with someone that was built because of how brands sort of treated global stars. And I think that one of the big challenges was the perception of value, I suppose, is always a tricky one, because local sort of creatives or artists or musicians or whatever it is have a perception of their value, and like, I'm not saying what's correct and what's incorrect, but and then obviously brands and local sort of marketing people have a perception of the value that a global person brings versus a local person. It's kind of trying to, I think one of the tricky parts of working with brands and cultures is making sure that the brand understands the value that the local
culture brings,
right? And that local culture understands their value, and comparatively what them being part of something means on a sort of local level. I think another tricky one is kind of the brands are very what's the right word? Loyal to who they work with. If they go, cool, we want to work with this person, they kind of see it as a long-term relationship, but they don't always have long-term budget, you know what I mean? They don't always have, cool, we always have something to work with you on. And I think that often the sort of the space that local sort of cultures add is like, we haven't been paid for so long, like we want to get money wherever we can. And I think that conversation of going, like, be true to the brands that are true to you is a tricky one, because it's going, well, say no to that paycheck because you're building a long-term relationship here.
With this brand,
but then it's making sure that you're getting the budget in that kind of relationship. So I think it's like, kind of, like a lot of the global market was mature enough that if someone worked with, like, if you look at sort of Pharrell Williams worked with Adidas forever, you know what I mean? And Adidas is obviously not always paying the guy money. So it's I mean, that type of example is an easy one, whereas you don't have that many local artists that have worked with brands for that type of
for that long.
Yeah, the relationship's not that long. So it's like people, I think, need like the space we're in, there's a lot of people who are going, cool, I haven't been paid for what I've been doing for so long, or they feel that energy of like South African like culture hasn't been paid for that long, so we're going to get paychecks where we can get them, but they're not going, well, let's try build towards sort of
the relationship.
Make sure that we're there for that brand all the time, so the decision for them is always like, yeah, we're going to use this person, we're going to use that person. So I think that's kind of one of the tricky parts to kind of then get brands to understand, like, this person's worked with a few brands, other brands, but because it's not like global culture of brand sort of superstar or star sort of relationship, you need to understand that, like, just because they worked with X brand 2 years ago doesn't mean we can't work with them now. You know, the market it doesn't think like the global market
that.
Because that precedent hasn't been set. So I think that's kind of been one of the challenges. I think also understanding the, like, how big a lot of the brands are based in Cape Town. So they don't for one don't understand how big some of the artists are, some of the local artists, and how well they've done in the continent, and I mean even beyond the continent these days, and how they're treated, like, from sort of other local sort of brands that are based in Joburg or kind of have a better understanding of kind of the size of these celebrities. And I think that one of the tricky parts is going, well, the celebrity is huge. They're getting big offers every month. Like, just because you put what you think is a big offer in front of them,
it doesn't actually mean it's all
stack
relative.
up. Yeah, it doesn't always stack up. And I think that that's kind of, I think we also sometimes assume that local artists don't get the same opportunity, and then we go, well, like, this should be a big opportunity for them. And I think it's, yeah, so there's a lot of like nuances that really make it tricky to kind of equate a brand getting involved with like a local artist or an international artist. And I think that a big gap is also kind of the management of artists locally. Also in its early days of like, how do we work with brands? How do we kind of make things happen in a way that is sort of a global methodology, you know? And I think that understanding those nuances and how kind of you can work with local managers and local kind of artist liaisons and kind of make sure that the brands are kind of getting what they need at the end of the day, and the artist is getting what they need, and kind of making sure that you find a nice little overlap between the two.
Win-win
is tricky. It's tricky, but it's not impossible, you know. And I think that that's a big part of what we do, is making sure that yes, you have to shoot the ad, or you have to shoot the documentary, or you have to create the event, or you have to create the campaign. But a lot of these like little things that seem like little things are really complicated.
They're really
like
complicated.
Just getting the person to be there on the day for the shoot is half the battle. Like, so I think, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. So there's definitely young creatives who are going to be watching this and who are going to want to know, as someone who's a bridge between culture and brands, right? You'd be the perfect person to answer this. As a young creative who's built a vehicle for themselves through whatever medium they use, right? Art, music, whatever. What's the best way for people to actually reach out to brands? Like, is it, because we're also living in a time where everything it's a number-based economy, right? We can talk about your numbers on Instagram, and I talk to a lot of people in different fields on Dead Radio. And they talk about how numbers are affecting the art. They're drowning out purists that exist because everything is commercial now. Subcultures don't exist. But what's the best way for someone to actually reach out to brands? Is it like, obviously I work on my craft, right? And say I have an idea that would be perfect for a brand. And say I don't have the numbers, but I have the skill or the ability. What is the best way to speak to a brand? Because they also speak in a language that if you don't speak to them in that language, it's like, we can't really hear what you're saying.
I think there's kind of two parts to answer that question. I think the first part, in terms of sort of artists or people that have a creative output that want to link with brands, I think for them to kind of position yourself in a way that makes sense, or cuts through everything else, I think a key part of that is understanding what your unique selling point is. I think a lot of people that have built a following and are doing something interesting, they kind of reach out to brands and they go, hey, like, I want to collaborate. And I think brands get that sort of, we get hundreds of those every day.
All the time.
So it's like for them to go, well, yes, you're the one I want to collaborate with, is really tricky, unless you position yourself in a place where you're going, cool, this is what I do, this is what I think I can do for the brand. This is kind of, you got to be a little bit bold, and a little bit, you got to put yourself out there and go like, well, this is my sort of like what I'm good at. This is what I can do for your brand in terms of like obviously a lot of people think that they can be the solution to all of a brand's.
Of course, everyone has ideas.
Yeah, which you can't be, but you can offer a brand a certain sort of foot through the door into a certain space, or a lot of people do something interesting, and that's why they've got an audience, and obviously the brand wants to be in that audience and be aligned with whatever you're doing. But I think selling yourself in the right way is really something that people don't often sort of engage with. They kind of just go, "This is what I built. Come work with me."
Sponsor me.
They don't go, "Oh, I do this. I think the brand could slot in like this or this or this." And I mean, here's what you would get out of it as the brand. Like, here's your return. Here's what I would get out of it. This is how we can both benefit from this relationship. And I think that sort of engagement makes the brand, even if the thing's wrong, even if what you want to do is wrong, it makes the brand go, okay, you've thought about how this could work, you've thought about how it could benefit us, you've thought about how it could benefit you, there's sustainability there, you've made sure that you've positioned yourself as sort of unique to everyone else that's doing stuff. And I think that sort of self-awareness and going, cool, there's a lot of people doing stuff, what's unique about what I'm doing, how can that assist what the brand's doing, and how can kind of we both win here. And I think that's kind of a key thing, is like just knowing and understanding what you bring to the table from a culture perspective or from a creative perspective, and kind of being able to verbalize that succinctly and in a way that a brand can go, yeah, this makes sense, or this doesn't actually make sense, but maybe we can do this, or this doesn't make sense now, we know we've got something coming up in 6 months that it would make sense for. And I think that's like, another thing is, for me, people go, oh, if a brand says no now, it's like no forever. But a lot of people don't kind of go, well, a brand's got plans of its own, you know.
Yes,
it's got a schedule. If it relied on you to come to it, it would be in problems. You know what I mean?
Be in business.
Yeah. So it's like there's a schedule, there's a calendar, there's plans. Maybe what you're suggesting is right for the brand, but in a 6
Not
months,
right now.
And it's like going, well, be patient, understand, like you if you're doing something and you're digging into that thing and kind of pursuing it, and it's working and it's getting returns, and there's kind of people are following what you're doing, you're going to eventually be in a position where brands, there's something they want to do with you, you know. And if you kind of, I think the people that we often get sort of reached out by are people that they don't fully think through the whole like system. They just go, I've built this, I want to work with the brand, and it should happen now. And I think that's the timing is everything. It's like really making sure that you continue to do what you're doing, and if you're seeing success, the timing there will be timing where what a brand wants to do and what you're doing aligns. Because it just doesn't. It doesn't always come when you want it to come. But I mean, you got to be patient. You got to continue to like kind of do what you believe in, and push.
The door will open.
It will open.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think there was kind of the second part of what you're asking, which I've kind of forgotten now.
We'll
come back to it.
Okay. And then, like you said, the bread is 10 years old. It's a decade, right? And you obviously your team has grown, your business has scaled. What are some of the intangible things you look for when hiring someone, right? Because the tangible things are, can you do the job?
Yeah.
Can you shoot? Can you edit? Are you professional?
Yeah.
Those are the tangible things. But what are some of the intangible things you look for in people that end up being great employees?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think a lot of people don't think about the things.
Those things matter.
Yeah, they don't think about them. They just go, this person's really good at this.
Yeah, it's like, that's not enough.
Yeah, being really good at one thing, or really good at the creative output, or it's not enough anymore.
Yeah, it's not enough.
It's like I think more and more people are care about their experience at the office every day. You know what I mean? They don't want to go to a place, even if your colleague is amazing at the work they produce, but then they kind of don't have any self-awareness, or they don't know how to kind of, if they're in a position of leadership, they don't know how to lead you, or they don't know how to deal with confrontation, or they've got no sort of emotional intelligence. It's really tricky to kind of go, well, let's get along, but you can't treat me with respect,
you know
what I mean? for us, it's definitely a case of going, well, we've gone from quite a small team and we've grown quite a bit over the last 2 years, and some, like obviously we've learned a lot in hiring people, and you only interview a person 2 or 3 times before they join your team, and so that's maybe 2 or 3 hours you get to spend with someone to understand what makes them tick, what drives them, and sometimes you get it wrong, you know what I mean? You feel like someone's a certain way, you've asked them, they've answered the questions right, you kind of, you've seen their work, so you know their work's good, or you think their work's good because of how they've packaged it. And you, from a personality perspective, they're presented well, they're solid. But when you put them in amongst other people that are maybe their colleagues or people that they need to manage, they're different. Clients, they're different to how they treat you as kind of the person who runs the business. They have a different way of dealing with you to how they deal with people that they kind of have management over, you know. So I think for me it's like a key thing is like emotional intelligence, like people who are able to kind of deal with tricky situations in a way that's caring, that really does allow them to kind of support people around them, especially more senior people that we hire, like taking responsibility, taking accountability, knowing what you need to get done, and making sure that the team around you can assist you in doing that. I think for us, we love people that have a drive. They're ambitious. They don't go, I'm just going to tick these boxes. They go,
and I'm done.
Yeah, they go, I'm going to make sure that, like, even if this is the last project, whoever else is working on this project remembers me for this one. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that we have a lot of people in our business that are like that. So it's been really, I mean, I think South Africa has great talent, has a lot of young people that are really driven to succeed, and they know what they're good at. They really work hard and get that done. So I think we are in a place where if you put a bit of effort in, you can find the right people. And as I said, you get it wrong sometimes, but also some people might be wrong for your business and right for another business, and that's true. It's hard to tell before, you know. But I think definitely drive. Like a willingness to learn. I think, I mean,
curiosity.
I learn new shit every day. Like my team, like a lot of them kind of say things and I'm like, shit, I never thought of it like that. You know what I mean? You've been here for 2 years or a year or whatever, and this is your first job, but you're saying stuff that I like
never knew.
I've been in this industry almost like 15, 20 years, like, and I've never thought of it like that. Or and I think it's like having that open mind that you haven't like learned everything. You never can, you know what I mean? There's too much and too much changes and evolves that you're always learning. You're always kind of, I mean, every generation, every like new person we add to our business, they come with something different, a unique experience. They've grown up differently, they've interacted with different people, maybe something else has been a passion of theirs, and it's kind of, for me it's like, drive to do better, like sort of a passion to learn, like a real willingness to kind of work with and understand people are 3 things that I think beyond kind of your skill set at the time are super important to us.
I just needed us to like lean into that, because I do feel like everyone just focuses on hard skills, but like so much of being a human being is like the soft skills. It's like understanding how other people feel in the room and navigating around that. Okay,
and having manners.
And having manners. True.
I mean, it goes a long way. Like, and it's not just having manners with the team that you work with. It's like suppliers, the people that actually are getting the job done on like the ground are like will go so much further for you if you just treat them again like human beings. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of people in this world that go, these are tasks that need to get done. Let's get them done. They don't think about how. Kind of that
it's a tricky thing, because like you could be the most talented person in the world, but like if you can't interact with other people, it's like, what's the point of all that talent? Okay, let's switch gears. I'm very interested in photography and how much of a big role it plays in your creative life. Because like still today, you still shoot like portraits of people. What is it about photography for you that like you love so much, that you're drawn to, that like, what does it mean for you?
So I mean, when I started We Are Awesome, like photos was everything. Like that was, I mean, everything else was kind of to make sure that people saw the content, you know. And I think that, the content was all about capturing people having fun, people being creative, people like sort of expressing themselves. And I think, like for me, that was like everything. Was like, how do you capture these people where they're at like the height of their sort of enjoyment, you know what I mean? Like, how do you make sure that like other people buy into what they're feeling and do it in a way that kind of like is true to what they are feeling? And I think that kind of the inquisitive part of me like always wanted to kind of capture new people and kind of like that was a big part of what We Are Awesome was. And then we started running the bread and obviously it was. We were a little bit more mature. We were running it like a business. We a lot more of the kind of admin side of things and kind of the people management and all those is more my day to day now, and that's fine. Like it's still part of like what needs to happen for the creative output to happen. But for me, portraiture's like something that I can't stop doing. It's like you meet people. And
I see that literally.
It's like you there's certain people that you like. That you almost, they inspire you to kind of continue that process. And it's because like for me, portrait is about like capturing someone's like, I mean portrait, but it's capturing someone in like a rawness that's not sort of clothed in their unique style. It's them. It's like, it doesn't matter what, they're not hiding behind anything in portraiture. They're not hiding like any part of their sort of raw character when you're shooting a portrait of them, because it's not about like sort of their style or their like
background
or the landscape. It's very much just their face, and for me like interesting faces and interesting kind of people you can capture through a portrait. And I mean for me it's like you also meet so many great people, and it's a very personal experience, like taking someone's portrait. You know what I mean? They're welcoming you into their space, and I think that there's like a kind of openness there between the photographer and whoever you're photographing, and they're kind of they're not sort of hiding behind sort of anything really. It's just them, their face,
their true essence,
who they are, you know. And I think for me, like that people side of things I was talking about earlier is like portrait is an extension of that. It's just like being interested in people and kind of what they represent, what's important to them, what like makes them tick. And I think that portrait is part of that. So for me, that's kind of something that is like I don't shoot as much for work related stuff anymore, but when I get the opportunity, I still do sometimes, but most of the time I'm doing the portrait as like a personal, like kind of project. Expression of like, cool, these are people that I really kind of am interested in and like want to kind of capture in a way that like they're excited about and I'm excited about, and we're able to create sort of a lasting image of them that kind of as they sort of mature and as they get older, they'll always have these like
moments.
And I think there's certain people, I mean, for example, like Rari, I shoot with a lot, and kind of you'll see like over like the last 4 years we've shot with a bunch of times, and it's kind of interesting kind of watching her kind of evolve as an artist, and kind of how she does put herself together, but also kind of her maturing kind of, it's really interesting for me to kind of capture that.
I get that.
And, I get that. Yeah, and I mean, you meet interesting people in South Africa all the time, so it's like you only have so much time to photograph people.
You'll never run out of
you won't, and it's always like trying to find the time to go, cool, well, let's set aside an hour here to take some photos. And it's like, for me, that just is, it allows me to kind of express another side of myself that I don't get to all the time in work projects.
I hear that. I hear that. What does the bread understand about events that other establishments don't? Right, I've been to quite a number of events that the bread is involved in. House of Vans. You guys did the Skate Noise now with Spotify. And every time I go to an event that the bread is involved in, I'm like, wow, like every single angle has been thought of from every single perspective. So I really wanted to find out, like, what do you guys understand about just like creating a space that people come together, that other brands or agencies like don't get, like, because you guys have figured something out. Maybe it's not conscious, but you guys have figured something out.
Yeah, I don't think we're the only people that do it.
Yeah, of course not.
But I think there is like with eventing and I guess anything in life, like people want to feel like it's an authentic space. And I think that the one thing that we try to do, and I mean sometimes we get it wrong, but what we try to do is play into the play into and understand the people that are going to be in that space. I mean, what often happens is a brand goes, this is what we stand for, this is what it needs to look like, this is, and that is not a universal thing. They think it is, and the biggest part is convincing it's not. Yeah. I mean, how a sportswear brand shows up in Barcelona to how it shows up in New York to how it shows up in Johannesburg is very different. And I think it's like understanding the space that you're in and the people that are in that space in a way that when they're at your event, they feel welcome and they feel like this is something that like makes sense to them. And I think that that's like something that, I mean, you spoke about House of Vans, and I think our Vans client is we've worked with them for a long time, so we have a good understanding, a good trust, and there's always going to be a good level of trust to be able to go, listen, this is the right way to do this, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that Vans as a brand we know the feeling we want people to leave with, but that feeling doesn't always look the same, you know what I mean? And that, it depends where you are, and I think for us, House of Vans was like a really good example of being able to go, this is what brings that feeling to this sort of audience. Like these things bring the feeling that Vans is after to this audience. And it's very different to what they did. I mean, we went, before we did House of Vans in 2019, we went to Berlin to their House of Vans. And the event was worlds apart, but that's what was important to people in Berlin. And we try to go, well, what's important to the people of Johannesburg or Cape Town or wherever you're doing the event is like what brings them to life, what like makes them excited, what elements of an event or of an experience really kind of drive them or enable them to have a good time. And for us, we've learned that like sort of something that's too slick or too kind of produced, too
overly produced.
People don't feel comfortable in that space. They want a bit of that grit. They want a bit of that like
the grind.
This thing feels real. And I think that's something that we've tried to bring to every event we've done is like this feels like it's real. It feels like people who are really passionate about this space have brought this to life without going, it needs to have like slick shit everywhere.
I get you.
You know what I mean?
You guys don't put a filter over it because the world is full of filters now.
People want real experiences. They want to, if they're skaters, they want a skate event. You know what I mean? If they're like into hip hop, or if they're into piano, whatever they're into, they want that experience in its realest form. They don't want it to be watered down by what the brand believes is right. They want to go, cool, this brand aligned what is right for our culture. This brand aligned with what's right for our subculture. And I think that that's something that we put a lot of effort in connecting with the right people. If we don't know a space or we don't understand it, like what are the things that excites this audience? Like, I mean, Skate Noise was a good one with Spotify. Like, we brought in the different skate crews and said, listen, like what do you want to see here? Like even down to the skate obstacles, they were like, no, it's got to be something that we can all skate. I mean, there's a big push for like women skateboarding in Joburg at the moment. There's such a hungry audience of women skaters.
True.
And we didn't want to create obstacles that they didn't want to skate. You know what I mean? Like because we like obviously some of the guys that have been skating for a long time and like have a lot of experience and have kind of the journey's been longer there. They want big, massive things, but we're like, no, we need to have a combination. We need to be able to bring that the woman audience in, so that this is an inclusive skate event. And I think things like those, like often a brand isn't in the position to think about stuff like that. And I think for us, that's what makes an event an event. It's like making sure that those little details are
sorted out.
Yeah,
like fuck, I've been to like events where you guys, and I'm like, who's involved? I'm like, oh, okay, it actually makes sense. Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears again. I want to talk about the prompt wars, right? So we're living through the AI age, right? And I believe we're living through a time called the prompt wars, right? Okay. What's your perspective on AI? Because creative people right now are on two sides of it. Some people are like, oh no, this is the worst thing that's ever come. It's gonna take all of our jobs. It's gonna destroy the very essence of creativity. Some people are like, this is a tool, actually. It's like a hammer, right? You can literally murder someone with a hammer, or you can build a building with a hammer. Which side do you sit, and how do you view AI and where it's taking us?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a tool. I definitely don't push back against it. I think in certain cases, I think people use it too much. It's like I mean, a hammer can't do everything. AI can't do everything, you know. So I think for us, we use AI in a few different parts of our business, but none of them are. I mean, I suppose some of them are creative output, but it's like to speed up a process that
to amplify what you already do.
I mean, certain things like obviously Photoshop and things use AI to kind of sort of improve your results with stuff you were already doing, which is great. I think that makes sense. I think that like anything, you can't use something to a degree where it becomes inauthentic. And I think a lot of people are going to use AI and drive things into a space where no one believes that, and no one, it looks fake. And I think it's going to make people who don't really get that people want something real. They're gonna try do stuff that's not going to land well. So, or it's not going to land as sort of widely as it should if it was real. So I think that there's going to be kind of misuse of AI, but there's going to be misuse of a hammer. You know, so it's like people just need to go, cool, how can I bring this into my workflow? How can I make this part of what I do in a way that assists me produce better work, not so much
does my work.
Yeah. I think there are certain industries that are going to take a bit of a hit because they're not going to need, I mean, if you look at even like a retoucher is now going to be able to do stuff a lot quicker than they were in the past, which is going to be great for their workflow, but it means that they're going to need fewer retouchers to get the same amount of work done. Maybe the workload increases or whatever, but there's going to be certain jobs where like AI is just going to be more efficient.
Take over. And that's just what it is. But
I don't think I don't think in the creative space, in the space where you're dealing with brands and culture and stuff, that it can't take jobs away, because it means that it's gonna create this inauthenticity that people don't believe and they don't kind of subscribe to, and that's going to kind of cause this revolt against it. You know what I mean? And I think that there's going to be a lot of clever people that go, we're going to bring AI into our workflow and make sure that we use it in a way that it really makes us more efficient than everyone else. And as soon as a few people do that and set great examples of that, it's going to become the norm.
I hear that.
So I think it's useful. I think it helps. I think it's how you work with it rather than like kind of trying to push back against it.
I think it's already too late. It's like as important as when the internet came, right? And there were people in the beginning who were like, oh, the internet is a fad, it'll never last. And like, 30, 40 years later, like, this is where we're at. And I feel like AI is just as pivotal. But AI shouldn't do your job. It should just amplify what you already do. That's how I view it. Okay, dope. As we're winding down, I ask every single guest on Dead Radio about the evolution of their dreams, right? I'm very interested in how people's dreams evolve. Like your dream obviously evolved, and then you started We Are Awesome, and then that evolved to the bread and just being a bridge between culture and brands. What's a new dream for Andrew today that you didn't have 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 6 months ago? Because dreams are always like evolving, right? Like you get into the building and you're like, oh snap, there's 100 doors I can walk through in this building, just through maybe photography is the thing that led you into the building, and then obviously you started an agency, found the door of brands. What's a new door that you want to walk into today?
I think something that's definitely noticeable in kind of my personal journey and kind of our journey as The Bread is the type of brands that we're kind of keen to work on. I think that's really evolved over the years. In the beginning, we were very much like, no, they have to be very like youth focused. They have to be like a certain, like there was this element of cool brands are cool to work on, and I think that I've learned a lot over the years that like you can work on a brand that's not traditionally cool and do something cool with it.
And make it cool.
Yeah. And also not every brand needs to be cool, you know what I mean? A brand can also, it can see a lot, you can create a lot of success for a brand without pushing it into a cool space. Like it, and I think that for me, as I get a bit older, as I get like my priorities change a little bit, like a little bit more family oriented, like there's other brands that are really important to me now that weren't 10 years ago.
10 years ago, I feel that.
And I mean, there's like, I still want those brands to speak to me in a way that I want to be spoken to. And if I want that, shit tons of other people want that too, you know what I mean? So I think it's like, how do you kind of go out of your comfort zone or your original comfort zone into spaces that are interesting and kind of you now working with brands that are slightly different, you're doing stuff that's different, you're creating experiences for people that they didn't have before. And I think what's interesting is like 40-year-olds 20 years ago wanted a different experience to 40-year-olds today. So it's like, how do we evolve the experiences we create as brands and the experiences we create as sort of agencies and make sure that we're moving with those generations, you know what I mean? We're not just going, well, 40, 50-year-olds, they want this and that's what they're going to want forever. No, like they've grown up with different things like the internet, like kind of AI, like kind of these other technologies that have really gotten cool. Well, you have a different perspective on life now as a 40-year-old as you did 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that there's like, that opens doors in terms of where your mind's willing to go, you know, and I think that I've definitely looked at brands that I in the past didn't think were cool, and now I'm like, this stuff is actually quite cool and what it offers my life. And I think that if we're able to kind of tell that story of how it can benefit people's lives and how brands can kind of create products that really enhance how you kind of live your day-to-day life, like for me that means that those kind of doors and that kind of expansion of your mind is going to continue to happen.
Okay.
I also think as you get involved in different things, I mean, for a lot of my life, like sports were a big thing, but not really fitness. And now, like as I get a bit older, fitness is like a thing. I'm like you only live on this earth so long. You might as well live in it with a well-bodied as much as you can. So for me, like fitness has become a thing that I'm really interested in and kind of trying to getting engaged with, which opens you up to a whole lot of other brands
that you didn't see at all before that. Okay, I see that. I love that. What's your last piece of advice to the dreamers out there, the people who want to step out and make a difference, make a name, build a platform, start a brand, work with brands? What's your last piece of advice to the dreamers out there?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I think that's something that no one really told me when I was younger, was that you can do whatever you want in this life. Like you can, if you believe in something and you find a way to get the resources and you work hard enough, you can make anything a reality. Obviously to a certain degree, but like in terms of like creating a career for yourself and creating something that makes money, if you're able to kind of like sort of lean into something that you believe in and give it the effort it needs and kind of sort of build something, you can do whatever you want. And I think that a lot of people go, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. You may need to do that to get to as a stepping stone to get here, but you can always kind of reinvest what you make here into this space. And I think that you also, like connected to that is like everything you do builds into what you end up doing.
It compounds.
So, yeah, so it's like, if you go, I mean, I study economics, like very little of what I do has to do with economics now, but I learned so much from that space to kind of go, this makes sense, like from a creative perspective, or this makes sense from a product perspective. And it's like, if you take every kind of experience in life as like a lesson, or like something where it builds who you are so that you're able to do what you really want to do. You never feel like you're in the wrong space. You never feel like you're doing the wrong thing. You're just kind of taking the steps to get to where you want to go. And if you keep that focus on going, this is ultimately where I want to be and what I want to be doing and who I want to be doing it with and for, then you can understand each experience, and you can appreciate each experience in life on a different level. And I think that you don't always need to be working like directly towards your goals to be working towards your goals.
I love that. Yeah, because there are so many different paths you can take to get to the destination, right? Damn, I love that. This has been an amazing conversation, super enlightening. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode of Dead Radio from your boy Ini.
And you're live on Dead Radio.